Welcome to Shane Talks 99, episode 19, May 19th, 1999. It's a big episode. Let's talk about the biggest film that came out in 1999. I'm talking about box office. I'm talking about budget. I'm talking about everything. Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. It had been 16 years since we got a Star Wars film in theater, and this was the one that we were given. And good or bad, it started off this whole franchise getting rebooted and everything that we got from the Star Wars franchise. I waited my entire childhood for this. I grew up watching the original trilogy, absolutely loved them. And in 1997, they announced that they were re-releasing the original trilogy in theaters with some special effects and upgrades and new technology and stuff like that to make improvements to the original trilogy. It later became known that this was all just kind of a test. It was a test to get ready for what they wanted to do with the new Star Wars trilogy. I was a junior in high school when that came out. I was passionately in love with the Star Wars universe. I grew up watching them. I grew up reading the Timothy Zahn Thrawn trilogy. I was ready to go. And then fast forward 2 more years after those re-releases in 97, 2 years later in 99, we got The Phantom Menace. So I remember the holiday season of 1998. The Waterboy was being released, and I'm an Adam Sandler fan, so I knew I was going to see it. But all of a sudden, there was rumors that the Star Wars trailer was going to be on there. Day one, to the theater, bought a ticket for the Waterboy, and just absolutely loved that first teaser trailer that came out. I seem to remember it wasn't the opening weekend for the Waterboy. I don't know. I might be wrong about that, but nonetheless, the trailer made me feel like a happy little Jedi. Like, it was so perfectly cut together, just like little clips, little mystery, kind of introducing the characters, showed some quick glimpses of the action scenes. Rewatched the trailer this week just to have it fresh in my head, and it was a really well done teaser trailer. The music kind of hits and misses at certain parts in the trailer, but aside from that, it was still a really well done trailer. The second trailer came out in March of 1999, and it was attached to the film Wing Commander. I guess that was their last ditch effort to try to get people to go see Wing Commander, maybe. I don't know. Since I was working at the theater at the time, it actually showed up a couple of days early to the theater on its little 35 millimeter reel that the trailers came in on. And I remember, I think it was Dave Mayer, but I can't say 100% sure, but that it was either Dave or Devin. One of the two of them went upstairs, had our projectionist spool it up onto a reel, and the first movie theater that we had empty, boom, that new trailer was on screen for us to watch. And then I remember them moving it around to different theaters and always being like, if you're free, theater 5 in 4 minutes, or, whatever like that. All of us who were available would run in there and be, I swear I watched it 4, 6, 8 times that first day that I could. And the only thing that I have against that second trailer, and it might even have been in the first trailer, was the fact that they showed Darth Maul's double-bladed lightsaber. I always kind of thought that, like, that shouldn't have been shown. That should have been like, boom, like a big surprise in Act 3. But it's a tough argument for me to make because obviously toys with the Star Wars franchise are a huge thing. Obviously, Darth Maul was going to have a toy that was released before the movie came out, so it was going to be really hard to actually hide the fact that Darth Maul had a double-bladed lightsaber. I can show you the toy. Here is what that Darth Maul toy looks like, and he definitely shows off a double-bladed lightsaber. So it would have been pretty hard for them to actually keep this a huge secret. You would have had to release like one toy that had like the single-bladed version, and then after the movie came out, finally released a second wave of toys that included the double-bladed one. Again, from a marketing standpoint, I would have done it. Now you're selling 2 different versions of the Darth Maul toy. But anyway, when he fights Qui-Gon on Tatooine in the movie, he only uses the single blade side. So then, like, I just think it would be so cool, such an awesome reveal at the end of the movie. Third act, we're getting to the big battle sequence, and all of a sudden, boom, doors open. There's Darth Maul. Jedis are like, we'll take care of this. And all of a sudden, he pulls out a double-bladed lightsaber. He fights 1 Jedi earlier. He uses 1 blade. He's about to fight 2 Jedis. He uses 2 blades. And I think it just would have been like a shock moment. Like shock moment on the level of like Terminator 2. If you haven't heard Jason and I discuss this, Terminator 2 as a film was kind of ruined because of the fact that it didn't play on the fact that the Terminator was actually a good guy the second time around. If you had never shown the trailer where it shows the Terminator protecting John Connor, it would have been 40 minutes into the movie. You would have been watching it thinking, oh my God, Schwarzenegger's back as the bad guy. And this time Robert Patrick is the one that's going and trying to save him. That makes that hallway scene, like at the mall arcade when they're running away, that makes that scene so much more powerful when you're like, oh my God, kid, you're running towards the Terminator. And then all of a sudden he says, get down. And then he shoots Robert Patrick. You're like, oh crap, like the good guy just got shot. And then suddenly at 40 minutes into the movie, you're confused and you're like, wait a minute, what? Like, so if you haven't heard Jason and I discuss that before, we've talked about it on the podcast before. One of the worst things a trailer has ever done was spoil that. And I think that this double-bladed lightsaber giveaway could have been a huge epic moment in this film if they had just waited, never shown it, and then on screen you saw it for the first time. So all right, cool. I'm getting off on a tangent here. The double-bladed lightsaber could have been a huge shock to people the first time that they had ever seen it. So another thing that I wish wasn't included in this second trailer, and it's between Jason and I to this day, Obi-Wan Kenobi screaming "No!" near the end of the trailer. Both Jason and I kind of had the same feelings about this when we would talk about it, because he's the one that pointed out, he goes, that's the moment where Obi-Wan witnesses Qui-Gon's death. And I was like, no, dude, they're not going to do that. They got Liam Neeson playing Qui-Gon. They're not going to kill him off in this movie. And like, we kind of, argued back and forth about that, because I never thought they'd hire somebody as amazing as Liam Neeson just so that they could kill him off. Well, May 4th of 1999, Jason and I went in the very, very early morning hours, right around midnight. We went to Walmart, and it was because the soundtrack for The Phantom Menace was being released. And so I went there to buy it, because back then I had to own a lot of CDs, much like I have to own lots of DVDs. I had to own a lot of CDs, and I wanted the soundtrack to this. And I remember standing there in Walmart, and I picked it up, and just without even thinking, I looked at the back of it, and this look came over my face. And Jason, not even missing a beat, he looked at me, and he was just like, I'm right. I'm right. And I had to confirm that track number 15 is called the High Council Meeting and Qui-Gon's, where'd it go? Qui-Gon's Noble End. And then the next track 16, is the High Council Meeting and Qui-Gon's Funeral. So yeah, right there, spoiled it. 2 weeks before the movie came out, the soundtrack on the back of it gave away Qui-Gon's Noble End and Qui-Gon's Funeral. The next year in 2000, they released another version of the soundtrack, nice big double booked sparkly blue version of it. It was designed to be literally if you were sitting down watching the movie with no dialogue being played. I've read some things that it didn't exactly do that properly, but it was a decent, collector's item. It's got a lot of pictures from the different parts of stuff and everything. So it's a nice little collector's item to have this double disc CD version of the soundtrack with a lot more music, and it has the Duel of Fates dialogue edition in it, where there's talking and whatnot through the recording of the Duel of the Fates. So once my argument was null and void, where I thought it was just like misdirection that they were trying to do with no, Jason was right about his theory about Qui-Gon dying, and it was confirmed there. So I remember it was Monday, May 17th. We were having an all-staff meeting late at night. It was like a 10 p.m. staff meeting. The doors were locked for the day, and it was under the ruse of the fact that we needed to be told about different policies and different things that were going to be in place once Star Wars opened in a couple of days. And they were trying to get us all, on the same page, make sure everybody knew what was going on, what was allowed, what wasn't allowed, no passes, things like that. The meeting itself was only like 10 to 15 minutes long, and then I remember our managers looked at us and said, and one last thing, in like 15 minutes, we're starting The Phantom Menace. You're not allowed to tell your friends or family. You're not allowed to invite anybody. This is for employees only. You can call them and tell them, I guess we could tell them what we were doing. We could tell them we were watching the movie, but we weren't allowed to invite anybody. We had to stay. We had to watch it. And that was it. That was our one chance as employees to watch it. I feel like Jason's brother Dave kind of tipped him off, let him know what was going on, because Jason was there that night, watched the same screening with us, even though he wasn't technically an employee of the theater. He worked at our sister theater, the Castleton Arts Theater. But yeah, so I remember Jason was there. I'd say a good 30 of the staff probably stayed and watched it. And then I realized like that's how important it was, like being the employee that got to see it so much earlier than everybody else. Like I had no idea I was going to get to watch it that day. They had literally told us that we might not get to watch it early because of all the security and everything that was going on with the movie. Like I remember every day talking to Dave and Devin and being like, has the print shown up? Is there any chance we're going to watch it? Like, and there was rumors of it showing up, under padlock, and we wouldn't get the combination until they called us like a couple hours before the first showing, like all kinds of rumors and everything. Like I said, we did eventually get it a little early. Back in the day with 35 millimeter film, it was kind of general practice to preview it to make sure that there were no issues before the audience saw it, to make sure there were no missed splices or, damaged reels or damaged film or anything like that. So for whatever reason, Lucasfilm 20th Century Fox eventually gave us the combination lock early and allowed us to watch it as a staff. And it was just awesome. So let's get to May 19th. Well, actually, you know what? We even have a day earlier. Let's get to May 18th. The day before the movie came out, I worked the early morning shift that day. I was off, 5 or 6 o'clock. I remember leaving the theater, and on my way out, we had a pretty decent line at that point, maybe 100, maybe more than 100 people in line. I stopped and chatted with some of them that were at the front of the line, just like, how long you guys been here? Like, when did you guys show up? Yada, yada, yada. There was a really weird ticketing thing where Lucasfilm was trying to not allow theaters to sell tickets early because they didn't want people to try scalping tickets, which apparently was a big thing, and it still happened. Tickets were getting sold for like $100 on eBay and whatnot. So they tried to make it so that we couldn't pre-sell any tickets. Like a week before they finally gave in and they were like, okay, fine, you can pre-sale, because they realized like if we had all these hundreds of thousands of people waiting in line for the movie and they also had to buy tickets, like it was just going to back everything up, make it go super slow. So eventually they gave in, let people pre-buy their tickets so they could just go right in. So we actually ended up having 2 lines going that day, the people that had already bought tickets and the people that needed to go to the box office. But yeah, so I chit-chatted with them a little bit, and I let them know they were going to see me back in a couple of hours. Went home, tried to rest, but I was running on adrenaline. That night, my mom helped me dress up as Darth Maul. For opening of The Phantom Menace at Clearwater, I was dressed as Darth Maul. I had my Darth Maul lightsaber. I had the face makeup on. I had horns coming out of my head. I had bought a skull cap thing that makes you look bald, a bald cap. Painted it to be black and red. I had super glued horns onto it so that I could put it on and have the horns. Wasn't the best costume, but it was my early days of cosplaying and dressing up and stuff. So like I don't know why I did it as Darth Maul. Like today and all the video games I play, the Star Wars video games and stuff, I won't touch the dark side at all. Like I have zero interest in anything dark side. I'm 100% Jedi, 100% light side Force user, 100% blue lightsaber, like absolute 0% chance of doing anything, Sith or dark side related. Yet in 1999, I cosplayed as Darth Maul because he was the new and coolest thing, and he looked awesome, looked like the devil and all kinds of stuff. So I don't honestly know why I did it. And like I said, it wasn't the greatest costume, but I did it. And I went back for opening day for the first 6 hours I went back to work around 10 p.m., kind of hung out in line with the people that were dressed up out in line. And, I wasn't technically scheduled, so I was just kind of there as like extra help and to, be as Darth Maul. Did that, took pictures with a bunch of people. Around 6 a.m. I ended up I was crashing, and I can't remember. I think it was Dave Mayer that worked the overnight. But he ended up it may not have been Dave, because Dave's son Drew was born right around this time. So Dave may have even been at the hospital. It's been so long I can't remember. But I was crashing around 6 a.m. So they sent me home, told me to come back whenever I was rested. Like it was literally one of those like all hands on deck for the movie theater. Like it didn't matter when you were scheduled. If you showed up an hour early, 10 minutes early, they were begging you to come and help work because we were nonstop crazy busy. So I remember going home a couple hours. I slept because I was just overly exhausted. Went back in sometime early in the afternoon, probably 2 or 3 o'clock, and ended up working all the way until past midnight that night because my theater was one of the ones that in the country we ran 24 hours of the film the first day that it was open. Jason Richardson did our schedule at that point. He got the other managers and employees to agree to it. So at Wednesday night, or I'm sorry, Tuesday night / Wednesday morning at 12:01, we had our first showing, and that went all the way until 24 hours later, Wednesday night into Thursday morning. Every hour on the hour and some half hours, we showed Star Wars. It was playing in the off hour, like overnights. It was playing on all 12 of the screens that we had. Middle of the day, it was in at least our two biggest auditoriums because that was one of the things that Lucasfilm demanded, but it was in a lot of our other bigger auditoriums. I know The Mummy was still playing at this point, but it was definitely in one of the small houses. I feel like when this movie was released, I think we only played a total of 4, maybe 5 movies out of our 12 screens because so many of the screens were dedicated to The Phantom Menace. So I remember, like I said, Jason had watched that preview with us on Monday night. He came back and he watched the midnight show with some friends of ours. He watched a 3 a.m. show with some friends of ours. He watched the 6 a.m. show with some friends of ours. Like, within the first 48 hours the movie was out, Jason watched it like 4 or 5 times, maybe even more. I know he had to go to work at Castleton at some point, but then came back and watched an evening show on one of the first few days. My manager allowed me to let my dad come in and watch like a 4 a.m. show because the like 3, 4, 5 a.m. shows probably had like 20 to 40, 50 tickets each, but like nothing compared to like the sellouts we were having at midnight and stuff like that. So like my dad got to come in and watch it before he went into work at 6 a.m. So that was pretty awesome to just be a part of that and to just see the numbers and see the fans and see the people and see all the diehards that were there for the first 48 hours that the movie was out. So a little while ago, I talked about how The Matrix had changed CGI in film and that a lot of the film was shot practically, and then they added CGI with The Matrix. Last episode, we discussed The Mummy, where ILM was tasked with creating some new CGI stuff to be able to create The Mummy. Well, with this film, ILM stepped it up even more than they ever thought they'd have to. They spent 2 to 3 years developing new technology specifically for this movie, because in The Phantom Menace, there are over 2,000 CGI elements. Almost every scene in the entire film has some sort of CGI element to what's on screen. The only scene in the entire film that requires 0 CGI is when Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan are in the negotiation room and it starts to fill up with gas. That sequence is the only one that the gas was practical. There was no CGI at all done in that scene. So like ILM had to create different types of CGI for like textures of clothing, for the way that the clothing moved, and like how to put background characters in that weren't even real people that had to like move and do stuff as if they were just random characters. Like a lot of CGI went into this movie. Like I said, they worked on it for years. They had like 3 different heads of the CGI department that were all working together on different stuff to help each other. It was crazy. Now we're getting to the marketing of the movie. This movie, obviously, like marketing is something that is done with almost every movie, especially nowadays with social media and stuff like that. But back then, like the level of marketing with the Phantom Menace was insane. At my theater that I worked at, like these are some of the cups that we had. We had like they had a huge stuff with Pepsi. So like a lot of like Pizza Hut, KFC, if I remember right, Taco Bell, I think, all had promotions and ties in with the movie. But like these are the cups that we sold at the theater I worked at. We had an Anakin Skywalker cup. We had a Watto cup. We have a Qui-Gon Jinn cup. We have a Darth Maul cup. But those were all things that you could go and buy every time you went to the theater. I was recently made aware on our Summer Blockbusters episode that I'm missing 2 of them. I don't remember off the top of my head. Jason did inform me of the 2 characters I was missing. I can't remember who they are. But like marketing with like tie-ins to food and restaurant was on another level. I remember going to like gas stations and seeing like the different characters on like Mountain Dews and Pepsi can bottles and cans and stuff like that. There was 24 different cans between Pepsi, Diet Pepsi, Mountain Dew, and something else. They had 24 different cans. I collected all of them. Thank God I've thrown them away by now, which is one of the few things in my life I've thrown away. But there were 24 different cans that had Star Wars characters on them. They were in this like R2D2 cooler thing. Like there's ones that have the plastic lids that you open up and pull your drinks out of, you fill them with ice. I remember a friend of mine that had one of those, and I can't remember who it was, but like I feel like they worked at a gas station, and after a year they were finally told to throw it away, and so they instead put it in their car because they wanted to keep it. So I just remember Star Wars was everywhere, and the toys were obviously a huge part of that marketing campaign. And I remember when Jason, his brother Mike, our friend Mark, and I'm sure a couple of other dudes that we hung out with, we all went and got in line the very first night that the toys went on sale. We actually did this for episode 1, episode 2, and episode 3. We went to Toys R Us. We waited in line with a lot of other adults. Like it wasn't like it was a kids thing because they opened at midnight for all this stuff. But we went in, and for episode 1, I was able to pick up my Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan action figures. I already showed you the Darth Maul figure that I got that day. I bought a lot of other figures that are in other boxes and stuff right now. Those are just the ones I had easily available. But it was an insanely cool experience to be at with all these other adults who all were passionate about Star Wars. We hadn't even seen the movie yet. It wasn't coming out for like 2 more weeks, but we wanted all these toys for characters that, we didn't even know about. Like there was all the Kit Fisto, all the other, Mace Windu, the ones that were on the Jedi Council, Yaddle. Like we were buying these characters that we didn't even know we were going to like them yet or not, but they were new Jedi characters. It was just so cool. So as far as box office goes with the movie, it smashed it. First 24 hours the movie was out, $28.5 million. Broke all kinds of records. It broke the single-day record that had just been set 2 years earlier by the Lost World Jurassic Park. By Sunday night, after 5 days, it had broke $105 million, making it the first movie ever. The fastest movie ever to break $100 million in just 5 days. And then there's some technicality crap that goes on here. Friday, Saturday, Sunday is technically considered its opening weekend. And so for those 3 days alone, it only made $64 million. Unfortunately, because The Lost World, the Jurassic Park sequel, only opened on those 3 days instead of 5, it made more money in those 3 days as opposed to what Star Wars did with their $64 million. It's kind of not fair. Like if you want to do, opening 3 days or something like that, Star Wars probably had a lot higher opening 3 days if you just considered that. But because of its opening weekend, whatever. Like, and you look at it, it was supposed to open on Friday the 21st. It was supposed to be a Friday release, but 2 weeks before that, there was a convention going on called Show West. And at Show West, they announced that they were moving up the date to the 19th, the day we're talking about today. And their logic behind it, I kind of understand. These first 2 days, Wednesday and Thursday, they wanted all of the diehards, the crazies, the ones who absolutely love and are obsessed over this movie, the guys who are calling into work and causing like 200 million people to call in on one day or whatever. Like they wanted all of those people to be able to go see it right away while kids were in school, while, the world was still going on. And then over the weekend, that's family time. That's when, everybody else who wants to take their kids and their families can go and kind of break up those two groups of diehards and casual moviegoers. And so, that kind of split things up. And this moment, when this all happened, was one of those like game-changing moments in movie theater history. And it's because it was when Lucasfilm kind of basically took control of everything and flat out said that we have control. We want larger profit shares on our end, so you as the theater are keeping less of the ticket sales, which when you think about it, like we never really made a lot of money on ticket sales to begin with. So the fact that Lucasfilm was taking more money or whatever, okay, because we were having more people show up. So that was giving us more concession sales where we made our money. But Lucasfilm did things like saying that if you don't play it in your biggest house for the first 8 weeks, we won't let you play the next release. So literally for the entire rest of the summer, the two biggest houses at your theater location had to be playing Star Wars. Didn't matter if it was doing 100 people compared to, Wild Wild West coming out and doing, 400 people a show. You had to still keep it, which, trust me, there wasn't 400 people ever showing up to Wild Wild West. But you had to keep Star Wars in a big house. You couldn't swap it out with anything that was doing more business. And if you did and you got caught, Lucasfilm might not give you episode 2 or episode 3 or any other, 20th Century Fox movie down the road if you broke these. They kind of just made up their own policies and told theaters that you have to deal with it. And it was kind of crazy. It really changed the dynamic between distributor and exhibitor that was going on at that point in time. So everybody knows this movie. Everybody who's listening to this is a Star Wars fan. I don't need to go into in-depth about the plot. Everybody knows that it's, very political and a lot bigger than anybody was really ever expecting from a Star Wars movie, but it kind of set up what this prequel trilogy was going to be. But we'll do a quick rundown. We had Anthony Daniels, Kenny Baker, Ian McDermott, and Frank Oz all returned from the original trilogy, playing 3PO, R2, Palpatine, and Yoda. We got Ewan McGregor cast as the young version of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Absolutely most perfect casting ever. Absolutely created the Jedi who I love through all of the trilogies and all of the cartoons and all of the TV shows now. We got Darkman Rob Roy Liam Neeson in this movie, cast as Obi-Wan's master Qui-Gon. Again, I wish he would have been around more than just the one movie. I thought he was one of the best parts of this film. Natalie Portman, who was amazing in Leon and the Beautiful Girls. She was cast as a queen who would eventually, be Leia's mother, giving her the proper title of princess throughout this franchise. Ray Park got cast as Darth Maul. He was a stunt guy, but he impressed Lucas enough to get him cast. Didn't like his voice, though, so they dubbed that over with the comedian Peter Serafinovich. The baddest MFer in the galaxy was portrayed by Samuel L. Jackson, who got to pick his own purple-colored lightsaber, which is pretty dope. Terrence Stamp has a small part in the film as the original Chancellor, Chancellor Valorum. Ahmad Best probably got the worst out of everything when he was cast as Jar Jar Binks, one of the basically most hated characters ever in Star Wars, which sucks. But, we'll get to that later. And Indiana's own Jake Lloyd beat out over 3,000 kids who auditioned to be young Anakin Skywalker. And, man, his story's kind of sad. I've read about the bullying that he dealt with afterwards and how, the things that the critics said about him and his role in the movie kind of messed with him mentally. Got himself into some legal troubles and has since been diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia after some minor run-ins with the law, spending some time in prison, getting moved to a prison psychiatric hospital. It's kind of sad, and I really just hope he's getting the help he needs, because he doesn't deserve to be bullied for Anakin Skywalker. That was not as bad of a character as a lot of people made it out to be. And while this film was kind of a big letdown in the Star Wars franchise, it gave us the absolute greatest lightsaber battle that has ever been put on screen in any iteration of Star Wars in the Duel of Fates. Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, and Darth Maul fighting each other is one of the absolute best battles of any kind. Not even lightsabers, just any fight sequence in film history. It's one of the best. It's very well choreographed. There are subtle nuances in it about the way they fight together and they fight against each other. Darth Maul grabbing something and throwing it backwards to open the door was something that I didn't even catch the first time I watched the movie. I had to watch it a couple more times, and I was like, oh, I didn't even catch. That's why the door opened. It doesn't just magically open. He literally picks something up and throws it to open the door. Duel of the Fates is one of the best fight sequences in all of cinema, and definitely the best one in all of the Star Wars franchise. So as bad as the movie might be overall, that is still absolutely perfect. And the thing about The Phantom Menace that it took me 13 years to realize was in February of 2012, they re-released this film in 3D in theaters. And if you've listened to any of the regular Shane Talks podcasts, I am not a 3D guy. I'm not a huge fan. I don't really give a shit about 3D. I find that it takes me out of the experience. I consider, a 3D movie to be live theater. If I want that in-depth feeling like I'm involved in something, I want to go see something at the live theater, not watch something and be forced to wear glasses and be reminded that I'm not, it's just, it's a shtick and it's a gimmick and it's not something that I really care about, but I know Jason does. And I wanted to go see the movie again in the theater. I wanted the big screen experience for the movie, so I agreed to go. And while Jason and I were watching this movie, seeing the reactions of kids in the theater, laughing and giggling and quoting Jar Jar Binks, it changed something in my mind, and it made me realize that the Phantom Menace, as disappointed as I was back in 99, because like the first time I watched it, I was geeking out. Every subsequent viewing, Jar Jar got more annoying, the plot got more convoluted. I didn't really care about political stuff and didn't want it in my Star Wars movies. Like, I wanted action sequences and, like, that kind of stuff. But in 2012, watching that movie, my complete perspective of the original, or the second trilogy, the origin trilogy, 1, 2, and 3, kind of shifted and changed, because I was in a theater full of kids who were laughing and loving Jar Jar in a way I had never seen before. People my age, people that were older than me, people who grew up with the original trilogy and Star Wars never embraced Jar Jar because of how different he was from our trilogy. But watching it with these kids and seeing how they embraced Jar Jar and just loved the movie for what it was. And subsequently, since that experience, I have a lot of friends now who have kids in the 3 to 10 range who are now getting into Star Wars, who are watching episode 1 for the first time. And they talking to them, they do like Jar Jar. They have no hatred towards him. They had no preconceived notion when they watched it that they weren't supposed to like him. And George Lucas made a movie in 1999 that was for a new generation of kids, and not the same kids that were kids in the 1977 version and 80 and 83. He was making it for a new generation of kids. So I think episode 1 has grown on me a lot. I still, I watched it this week. I still cringe at stuff. I immediately finished it and fired up episode 2 just because I wanted to see how that felt going into the next one. And, they're both bad dialogue. One of the things that was so good about the original trilogy was the fact that he had a lot better writers than Lucas that came in and did work on the films. I wish he would have done something more like that with 1, 2, and 3, because I feel like they could have gotten rid of a lot of the stuff that kind of bothers people of my generation and could have made them a lot better of a trilogy. But looking back at what he did give us, I don't hate it as much as I did, especially episode 1. So next week-ish, May 28th is our next episode. We're going to be looking at the films Notting Hill and the sci-fi film The 13th Floor. Thanks for listening to me ramble on about The Phantom Menace. I will talk to you guys soon.